So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot coming up today, so let's get started with the day's highlights. With the Fed rate liftoff and central banks adjusting their monetary policies, expectations were high that the U.S. dollar would continue its rally into the new year. But a brake has been slammed on that this week. We'll sit down with an expert to talk about what's ahead in the world of currencies. The popularity of ultra-luxury cars here in the country is soaring, and competition is fierce among longtime frontrunners Mercedes-Benz and BMW, as well as Hyundai's new luxury brand Genesis. But first, we start off with a report card from the Finance Ministry this year on some of its key initiatives. The ministry reported in a meeting chaired by President Park Geun-hye that it has managed to save $213 million from its budget by cutting back on overlapping projects that had been penciled in for this year and next. A total of 689 schemes were pulled off the table for being similar or redundant with others. The ministry also said with the completion of the wage peak system rollout at over 300 public institutions, over 4,400 jobs can be added to their employment quota. Now, this is made possible through the extra funds secured from reduced to senior employee wages at public entities. Meanwhile, Korea's top central banker Lee Ju-yeol is not expecting any changes to Korea's interest rates following last week's rate hike in the U.S. because he believes that there are many more factors to consider when it comes to raising or cutting the country's rates. Ari Kim Min-ji tells us more.
There will be no immediate raise in Korea's interest rates. That's according to Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol, who says the recent rate hike in the U.S. is just one of many factors the institution needs to take into account when considering adjustments to Korea's rate policy. Last week, the U.S. Federal Reserve raised rates by 0.25 percentage point, lifting it into the range of 0.25 to 0.5%. He said although the global financial market is showing signs of stability, a normalization in U.S. monetary policy will likely impact the flow of capital as well as exchange rate fluctuations. Some analysts have said that Korea's central bank must raise its own rates to prevent a capital outflow. However, the top central banker has said on previous occasions the Fed's rate hike isn't necessarily a cause for concern at this time, mainly as the move was widely expected and the pace of the increase will be gradual. He said the central bank will consider the current macroeconomic situation as well as local conditions when deciding whether to adjust Korea's key rate. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
The U.S. dollar surged after the Federal Reserve hiked its interest rates for the first time in nearly a decade and hinted at more increases in 2016. But then the greenback's rally stopped short this week, recording its fourth straight session in losses on Wednesday. Let's take a closer look.
Following the Federal Reserve's rate hike last week, the U.S. dollar moved to within a stone's throw of its 2015 high, with many forecasting a start of the so-called super dollar era. This comes as the U.S. economy is believed to be on a recovery track with its strong jobs reports, while other countries around the world are still struggling with sluggish growth. China's growth and growth prospects have slowed sharply, and experts say the biggest loser from a stronger dollar would be China. This explains why the world's number 2 economy is continuing to loosen its currency link to the greenback, allowing the yuan to depreciate further and boost the country's export competitiveness. Earlier this month, the European Central Bank also cut its rate further to minus 0.3% and further extended its massive bond buying program with hopes of injecting life into the Eurozone's creaking economy. But despite expectations of greater gains in the dollar next year, the interest rate-fueled rally last week petered out this week as emerging currencies with strong ties with China climbed against the dollar. Where will the strength of the dollar lie in the coming months?
And to tell us more about this, Kim Il-sun, Director of the Society for National Infrastructure at Hanyang University, joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Well, pleasure.
So following last week's U.S. rate hike, it was widely expected that the U.S. dollar would continue to strengthen, which was the case last week.
Sure.
But then this week, we saw something different happen. It started falling in the foreign exchange markets. What is going on here?
Well, simply the value of the U.S. dollar is hitting the 11-year record for the first time due to the strong recovery of the U.S. economy, and we're gonna see possibly a super dollar period once again since 1985. This week's decline possibly is a temporary setback for the market easing out. We're gonna have to wait and see how it's gonna move along the next 6 months or so. When the U.S. dollar gets strong, other major economies and the currencies gets devalued, and it can further drive down the world economy south, I guess.
All right, then if we do see a comeback of a sharp dollar rally, then what kind of impact will this have on the U.S. economy as well as some other major economies?
Well, simply speaking, the U.S. will have more money from the foreign investors, and the emerging markets will lose money in reciprocity because of the strong U.S. dollar attracting more money to the U.S. continent. To keep the investment within their countries, emerging markets will probably raise their interest rate to make their markets and capital more competitive. And if they don't do anything about it, they're going to expect some perfect storm, so to speak, in the short period of time. And the low demand and strong dollar will also result in the low oil prices and the raw material prices. It's going to be a major hit for the emerging markets as well because of their high dependency. And as for the Korea's won will also lose its value. For the time being, it is a good news for the Korean exporters because of the weaker Korean won may mean higher exporting activities.
Right.
But in the long run, if it continues and triggered by the world economy going down, Korean economy, along with other emerging markets, will also be hit as well. So it's a wait-and-see type situation depending upon short-term and long-term implications.
And with hopes of minimizing negative impact coming from the strong dollar,
Right.
Europe and China actually expanded their quantitative easing programs.
Sure.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. We may see the U.S. dollar and euro parity, which means U.S. dollar to euro is the same value. First time in about 13 years per se. The weaker euro allows European exporters to enjoy strengths and higher profit margins, and we're going to expect some high profit rally for European companies. On the other hand, China has been keeping the yuan to move along with the US dollar in their FX market for past 20 years since 1994. But recently, they have decided to drop the tying the yuan to US dollar and go along with the basket of the 13 key trading partners' currencies. The reason is that if the dollar gets strong, the Chinese yuan also gets strong when it was tied. And they don't like it because when it gets too strong for Chinese yuan, the Chinese exporters may lose the competitive edge. And they see more of the profit of lowering the yuan and expanding the export beneficial for the Chinese economy. So the Chinese and Europe are countering anything and everything to make their domestic markets safer and stronger against the United States move.
So aside from those, what are some other factors that we should keep an eye on that could perhaps determine whether or not this dollar strengthening is going to continue?
Well, probably about three things. Fed, oil prices, and China. The people watch the level and the pace of another rate hike by the Fed, and the Fed hinted that there will be no more rate hike until the April of 2016. So for the time being, the market will probably ease out, but we're going to have to see what's going to happen second quarter of next year. And if the oil price continues to drop, dollar will get strong. But if it's opposite, dollar will probably get weakened when the time comes that oil prices hikes up. And how the Chinese economy moves will probably drive the major factor of how the dollar will move alongside with it.
All right, then what about Korea and its currency? I mean, let's look at both scenarios. If the dollar continues to strengthen, and the second scenario, if the dollar continues to weaken.
Sure, the strong dollar means that weaker Korean won. It means that the exit of the foreign investment from Korea, can be expected. The worst case scenario, if the substantial amount of the foreign investment leaves Korea, the domestic market of foreign exchange and bond market can be hit badly, and Korean government may have to step in. And if the dollar weakens again against won, the opposite would happen, meaning that the investment would come to Korea for more investment opportunities.
Right. All right. Then do you expect that we'll see any moves from the Korean government in response to the changes that we've seen in the U.S. dollar?
Well, for the time being, the Korean government believes that the Korea's foreign reserve is sufficient and the economic foundation is strong enough so that the rate hike by the Fed recently will have a limited effect on Korean economy. But if in case there is a major movement of the exodus of the foreign capital from Korea market to the overseas, the government may have to step in and stabilize the FX and the bond market. And one way to protect the domestic economy and the domestic currency is to lower the value of the Korean won alongside with the Chinese yuan and Japanese yen, and thus helping the Korean exports to get promoted.
All right, then I know this might sound a little bit far-fetched, but do you see a possibility of a currency war, perhaps?
Currency war. Well, we saw a happening of currency war back in 1979 and 1981 when the U.S. dollar was super strong due to the fact that the interest rate at the time was up to 20%. It was super high.
Right.
And because it created a lot of problem, back in September 1985, G5 nations finance ministers gathered in Manhattan Plaza Hotel, and they created what we call a Plaza Accord, simply devaluing the value of the U.S. dollar. At the time, it worked. But nowadays, it's kind of different. The currency war is more of the stealth mode. They're doing indirect measures to make things happen. So if every major countries around the world are gearing towards domestic market only, we're going to see some entire market of economy, world economy collapse. And the strong dollar will threaten the world economy to hurt more and bring about the trade deficit for the United States and trade surplus for other nations. And if this kind of imbalance happens, the entire world and entire global financial market may see some periodic crisis.
All right. Well, let's keep an eye on where the dollar is going to go on from here. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
After 5 years and 2 months, exterior construction of the Lotte World Tower has been finalized. Lotte Corporation held a special ceremony on Wednesday, during which the ridge beam was placed on the roof of the structure. Now, the ceremony is a symbolic act traditionally carried out by Korean builders to wish good luck to a building after completing its exterior construction. And with that, interior construction will kick off at the 123-story skyscraper in Jamsil, Seoul, with aims to open the tower to the public by the end of next year. Once open, it will be Korea's tallest and the world's 5th tallest building. Volkswagen Korea has issued a recall of nearly 28,000 cars due to a mechanical defect that could prevent airbags from deploying during an accident. Korea's transport ministry said Wednesday that the problem is with the steering wheel clock spring, which could tear an electrical cable connecting the driver's front airbag. Now, the defect can also cause the vehicle's horn to malfunction. 8 models made between 2010 and 2014 are affected, including the Passat, Tiguan, and the Golf. Another 1,200 Passat cars are also being recalled due to a software bug that's affecting engine and braking performance. These recalls, however, are not related to the emissions rigging scandal that rocked the German automaker earlier this year. With the much-anticipated Genesis EQ900 launch now behind us, the domestic high-end car market is firing up. BMW is eyeing to catch up with established frontrunner Mercedes-Benz S-Class with its all-new 7 Series. And in that mix is now Hyundai's newly minted luxury flagship. Our Eunice Kim has more.
When it comes to ultra-luxury wheels, auto enthusiasts will tell you without question the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is in a class of its own. It's a distinction the German car maker has hogged since introducing its 6th-generation S-Class to the Korean market 2 years ago. With a taste for the finest, Korea's luxury car buyers in the first 10 months of this year alone snatched up nearly 9,000 vehicles, far eclipsing last year's S-Class sales and firming up Korea as its 3rd largest market on the globe. clawing to contest the dominance, BMW is putting forth its all-new 7 Series that it says has evolved to another level in design and technology.
It's, of course, our flagship vehicle. This is the car that carries the latest technology, the latest innovation.
And unveiled in the domestic market this month is Genesis's inaugural vehicle. The EQ900 from Hyundai's luxury sub-brand is already grabbing the attention of critics ahead of its North America debut at next month's Detroit Auto Show as the G90.
This car was born under the best in performance and quality control. It will squarely compete with the world's finest.
Featuring a distinct design from the brains behind the original Audi TT, ergonomic seats certified by German back specialists, and a semi-autonomous driving system. The EQ900 represents Hyundai's earnest effort at carving out its own eminence, just the first of 6 models to come under the Genesis brand through the year 2020. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that does it for today. But we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for watching and see you soon.